is 11 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started for our webinar. First off, thank you all so much for joining us today. Today we are presenting the Healthy Kitchen, Reducing Toxins and Chemical Exposures. So before we get started, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. So all callers will be muted. If you have questions, feel free to use the chat box that you see on the right-hand side of your screen. Also at the bottom, it's a little bit different on each person's Zoom, but you should see an icon that says chat or an icon that says Q&A. We'll be monitoring both of those throughout the webinar. So feel free to send us questions there as Deb is presenting, and we will relay them to her at the end during the Q&A. Also, the webinar will be recorded and we'll be sending it out as soon as the webinar is done. So if you have to drop off early or if you didn't catch something and you want to watch it again, we will be sending an email with the webinar recording once it's over, and we'll also be posting it to our website. If you're on social media, feel free to give us a follow. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter and Instagram. You can't see her, but we do have our social media director on this call. She's managing our chat, and she really loves it when people send her a tweet while we're live presenting. So if you are on Twitter right now, feel free to tag us and she will respond to you. All right, so for those of you who are unfamiliar with Zoom, it can be a little bit confusing and everyone's layout is a little bit different, but on the top right, you should see what's called the view, and you can either do speaker view or gallery view. Because today is a webinar, you are mainly going to be seeing the slides with a little thumbnail of Deb presenting and myself. And then also, again, if you have questions, you can post them in the chat or in the Q&A. We'll be monitoring both, and we love it when people ask questions, and we do have time. This is going to be a 75-minute webinar today, so we're going to dedicate a decent amount at the end to getting your questions answered. So we love engagement, so feel free to ask questions as we go along. All right, so just a little bit about the Anticancer Lifestyle Program. So the Anticancer Lifestyle Program is an expert-led online course that helps you make healthy and informed lifestyle choices to reduce your risk of cancer, cancer recurrence, and chronic illness. For those of you who have not taken the course yet, we highly, highly, highly recommend it. There's 10 hours of really rich content, and it is free. We want to make sure that it's accessible to everyone. So please go on our website, and Erica will be putting the URL in the chat, and you can sign up for free. And we cover the areas of diet, fitness, change, mindset, and environment. It's self-paced. We have a lot of booklets and things to go along with it to help you move through the course. And one of the modules is focused on environment. So Deb is our environment expert, and I'll be introducing her shortly. If you are interested in the environment module, we talk about personal care products and cosmetics, perfumes and fragrances, dry cleaning, fabrics, household plastics, household cleaners, food storage, cookware, electromagnetic fields, and household pesticides. So those are just a few of the topics that we cover. Again, it's really rich in content, and we encourage you to sign up if you haven't done so already. All right, and in addition to our course, we offer learning circles, we have a blog, we have a newsletter that goes out every 2 weeks. So if you haven't done so already, sign up for our newsletter. We have free webinars, we have a private Facebook group where you can connect with other people who are taking the course or who have taken the course. And we also offer one-to-one coaching. All right, so before I make introductions, I would love to hear from our participants today. I want to make sure you guys can hear me okay. So if you don't mind, just typing in the chat box where you're calling in from, and I'll read a few of them out just to make sure you guys can hear me. And this way you can practice using the chat as well. All right, so we have Atlanta, Chicago, Texas, Boone, North Carolina, Austin, Texas, San Francisco, Vancouver. Okay, awesome. So it seems like you guys can hear me okay. Perfect. And we have people calling in from all over, so that's always nice to see. So my name is Seema Tucker, and I'm the marketing director here at the Anticancer Lifestyle Program. We have Erica Crespo, who is our social media director, and she is helping on chat. And then today we have our main presenter, Deborah deMoulpied, and Deb is a green living products research expert. She created the environment module of the Anticancer Lifestyle Program. She received a master's degree in education from the University of New Hampshire and was also the founder of a green goods store in New Hampshire. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Deb.
Oh, thank you. Well, thanks and welcome everybody. Thank you, Seema, and it's a pleasure to be here. This is a huge topic. There's a lot to cover, so we'll get started. And I just wanted to present the format for today. We're going to go over a little science, maybe a lot of science, appliances, utensils, food contact materials, cleaning, cookware, everybody's favorite, and end with healthy kitchen tips. So first of all, if you want to just keep it simple, the key to creating a healthy kitchen really can come down to avoid plastics and non-stick materials. So the non-stick I'm talking about is a group of family chemicals called PFAS, polyfluoroalkyl substances. It's what's used to make Teflon. So that's what I'm talking about, at least in this nonstick, trying to avoid. We'll get into the other nonstick categories later. But really, if you just want to keep it simple, it comes down to this. So where can some of the plastics and PFAS be found? Because sometimes we don't know or we actually forget. So I just made a quick little list. So plastics are all over: appliances, tubing, kettles, water filters, cutting boards, utensils, straws, ice cube trays, plastic wrap, food contact materials, storage containers. PFAS, the Teflon-like chemical, can be found inside your ovens, on griddles, Instapots, pots and pans, popcorn bags, takeout containers, processed foods, baking papers, pizza boxes, snow-stained textiles, and again, food contact materials. So just so that you can reflect on where it is in the kitchen. So let's quickly talk about plastics. So what's so bad about plastics? Well, plastics have the potential to leach unwanted chemicals and also to create microplastics, which has actually gotten a lot of attention recently, in case you've been reading about it. And we're talking about all plastics, the plastics 1 through 7, okay? Plastics can leach with the length of contact time. So the longer your food is touching the plastic, the more that's going to leach or migrate out of it. And leaching and migrate happens more when there's fatty foods, acid foods, and also heat. So a lot of these chemicals that leach are chemicals of concern. Some are called toxins, some are carcinogens, and also endocrine disrupting chemicals. So we call those EDCs. And there are lots of notorious chemicals. I'm sure you've heard about them. Things like BPA, which is part of the bisphenol family, PVC, polyvinyl chloride, that's plastic number 3. Polystyrene is plastic number 6. That's usually your styrofoam, but it also can come in hard plastic. And phthalates is very common as well. So just quickly, we talked about endocrine disrupting chemicals or hormone chemicals. And just to review real quickly, well, where are hormones? What are hormones? So this is just a little diagram of all the glands and organs in our body that are part of this hormone category. And this is basically what makes our body tick. So back in 2011, there was a lot of controversy about BPA in foods, especially canned foods, and also plastics like Nalgene bottles. So Dr. Bittner, back in 2011, decided to do a study, and he decided to test all the plastics because a lot of companies were saying, well, my plastic doesn't leach. So what he did was he collected almost 500 containers from all over the country, all plastics number 1 through 7. And he found that 70% of the plastics he tested positive for estrogen activity. That means it caused the hormones to sort of behave like estrogen chemicals. And we know estrogen is responsible, especially in the female body. But when he put the plastics under real world sort of stress, heating it, putting in acids, putting it through the dishwasher, that number jumped up to 95% of all those plastic containers actually leach some kind of estrogen activity. So we're not talking about just BPA, we're talking about lots of different chemicals that are part of this endocrine disrupting chemical group. So even though some plastics are a little maybe worse than others, you can see by this testing that a lot actually do leach these endocrine disrupting chemicals. So a lot of these EDCs are associated with several cancers. And if you look at this slide, you can see that plastics there on the left are associated with breast cancer. Up in the upper left, you have dioxins, which is a common contaminant that's also associated with breast cancer. On the bottom, you have DES. That was the chemical, actually, it's very similar to BPA, but it was used to prevent miscarriages back in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. That and DDT, the common pesticide that used to be used, both of those are also associated with endometrial cancer and breast cancer. So just a little diagram to show you what this scientific report from 2016 showed. So, and let's not forget the gentlemen. They are also affected by these chemicals, especially during fetal development. So if you look at the mother on the left, if she is exposed at critical times to some of the EDCs, you have then an adult male over on the right who may have decreased testosterone levels, reduced semen quality and quantity, and testicular cancer, which is on the rise, especially in younger men. So maybe you've seen recently a new book called Countdown. It talks about this subject. It's just out. I recommend it if you're interested in learning more about it. That book is called Countdown. So in case a lot of people are skeptical about whether these chemicals really are absorbed in the body, and here's just a little slide showing the absorption of BPA. That's the bisphenol chemical that is so widely talked about. And this is a measurement in the blood and the urine. And so you can see right out of the gate, within 10 to 12 minutes, you can actually measure the BPA metabolites in the blood and in the urine. And you can see it peaks and then it quickly goes down. The good news is, though, that most of it, not all, but most of it actually leaves the body in 24 hours. So that's good. The trick is to not have any more continued exposure. So that's good about BPA, but this is not true for all chemicals. Not all chemicals leave our bodies so quickly. So what's so bad about non-stick? Well, this PFAS group is a large family. No, it's a huge family of chemicals. And if you see here, we're up to over 9,000 different compounds that are under this PFAS category. I remember when it used to be 1,000, then it was 3,000, then it was 5,000. Well, over 9,000 are now registered with the EPA. So, and different PFAS compounds have been shown to affect growth, learning behaviors in infants, decrease a woman's chance to get pregnant, interfere with the body's natural hormones. We saw that little diagram of all the organs involved. Increased cholesterol levels, affects the immune system, and increases the risk of developing different kinds of cancers. This is what really winds me up, that PFAS is one of the strongest bonds on Earth. It does not break apart. It doesn't break down into microplastics like plastic does. And this is why it's called the forever chemical. and it's around forever. So think about, like plastic, all the plastic that's been made is still on Earth unless it's been um, uh, put through a high heat incineration. And the same is true for PFAS, except you need a very, very high heat incineration in order to break down this chemical, and in some places aren't even high enough heat. So it just winds me up that this is so difficult to get rid of, which is why a lot of people are saying that it needs to be taken out of the marketplace for non-essential items. And I consider pans non-essential items. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about that later. So number 4, a PTFE. That is actually the final compound that is actually on a lot of the Teflon pans. And it gets a little confusing, but the PFAS chemicals are used to make PTFE, which is a new compound, okay? So when the compound is on the pan, it doesn't revert back to a PFAS, okay? It is now called a PTFE. PTFE by itself is considered inert. It's a large compound. It is supposedly goes through us. However, at about 500 degrees, it can burn and you get that funny smell, especially if you put your oven on cleaning mode and stuff like that. And those are different fumes. They're also toxic. They kill birds. And you can get something that's called Teflon flu from that. So I just wanted to make that distinction between the PFAS that are used to make the PTFE final product of the Teflon pan. You may be exposed on that pan because during the process of making it, manufacturing it, supposedly sometimes there's a little PFAS left over and not all of it has transferred into the compound PTFE. And so you might get some exposure of PFAS that way. So you might have seen or been confused if you went to buy a Teflon pan because it is confusing with the marketing that's being used. So you have BPA-free, okay, because they actually used that chemical or that PFAS to use the Teflon years ago, but they took that out of the market about 10 years ago. So what they do now is just use another PFAS because there's 9,000 of them to choose from, and they still make PTFE, but it doesn't tell you that on the packaging. So you have to be a little bit careful. Of course, I don't want you to go and buy any more Teflon pans. But I do want to point out here that the marketing can be quite deceptive. So silicone, we're going to talk about silicone a little bit. So silicone seems to be everywhere, but what the heck is it? Well, silicone is made from silicon, which is the element, a very common element in our earth. So it sounds all nice and natural, right? So they make it into a synthetic polymer and they add a whole bunch of stuff to it. So there are 2 types of silicone. One is medical grade, and they call it medical grade because actually it's been tested on animals for safety, okay? Then there's food grade silicone, which is what we get in the kitchen, and that has not gone through a thorough testing for safety. So there is a difference between those 2. So silicone is used for utensils. There's a whole bunch of them. I have some in my kitchen, but they don't just contain silicone. You have additives and fillers and colorants and adhesive and sealants and all sorts of stuff. There is some research showing that some do leach what's called siloxanes, particular D4 and 2,5. D5 are mild endocrine disruptors. And if you heat the silicone, you know, they have the mats and the baking cups and stuff like that. Some VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds, those are gases that float in the air, can be released during high heat use. So silicone is produced on these new ceramic coated pans. Okay, that's a big distinction. And they have been shown to leach some additives such as titanium and siloxanes. So, but just so you know, I consider silicone not so bad. It's kind of in between stainless steel and cast iron. So I call it in the sort of the meh category, but we'll be talking about that later. But then there's this. There's another category of substances we might be exposed to. So they're called non-intentionally added substances. And these are chemicals that might be present in food contact materials. They weren't purposely put in there. But the Food Packaging Forum, which is a nonprofit out of Zurich, fabulous organization, used a research method, and they found over 100,000 of these substances that migrated into foods from a variety of food contact materials. So they were actually kind of surprised by this. But, you know, 100,000 substances, that's a lot. Are all of them toxic? Probably not. Are some carcinogens? Maybe. Are some EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals? Probably. But they don't know yet, okay? Because this is kind of a new category, new science, and so they have more identification to do and also to check out their safety. So maybe you've heard the good news is that cancer deaths are declining, and that's great. We're able to treat cancer better. But the incidence of cancer or the rate of cancer continues to increase. And even though some cancers like lung cancer are going down, which is fabulous, overall the incidence of cancer is rising. So some people say, well, the incidence is rising because people are getting older. Well, let's look at this graph. I really like this graph. And because this is about the younger age groups. So you can see that the bottom lines, that's the cancer death rate, and that is decreasing even in these younger groups, so that's great. But the lighter colored ones is the incidence, and you can see it's been rising for the last 45 years, okay? So on the right though, kind of an interesting thing. You see a dip in the blue and a small dip in the pink. Well, they're attributing that dip to the no smoking campaign that started in the late 60s. So you can see the effect of chemicals from like smoke and what it did to the incidence, but then the incidence started to continue to rise. So why is the incidence continuing to rise? Well, we know it's not genetics. We know over the last 45 years that obesity and the lack of exercise has risen. Both are strong risk factors for cancer. We also know that our exposure to chemicals through pollution and products and plastics in our home also has risen over these decades. So, you know, cancer is really complicated, but many scientists agree that it is reasonable to assume that the environment plays a role in this increase in the rise of cancer. So while we're talking about the risk of cancer, I just wanted to share this research. So this is from the British Medical Journal, and it's an observational study. So it's a snapshot in time. And they did it on processed food consumption. So for every 10% dietary increase of highly processed foods, the risk of cancer rose by 12%. So let that sink in a little bit. 10% dietary increase rise, risk for cancer rose by 12%. Now, because this was an observational study, they really didn't draw conclusions. However, the researchers did say that more research needs to be done on the nutritional composition of processed foods and also the contaminants that might be in processed foods. So we've been talking about all these chemicals of concern related to our foods and in the kitchen. So let's talk about how they get in us. Well, there's three ways of exposure. You have inhalation, so what we breathe. Remember, VOCs, volatile organic compounds. Particulate matter are the little bits floating in the air. Dust, fumes from things like cleaning. You have ingestion, basically what we eat and drink. Absorption is things that go through our skin, Cleaning products and VOCs actually can go through our skin. Please note at the very bottom that the particle has to be of a certain size in order to get into our body. Not everything goes into our body or we wouldn't be able to go swimming. So again, it needs to be at a certain particle size, and I'll mention that later on. So, and that's true for all of these different exposure routes. So I often get the question of how bad is, and I'd like us to rethink that. So, and I'd like us to ask, well, what is the health risk? Okay. In toxicology, there's a little formula, and basically it's hazard times exposure equals your risk to health. Okay. And exposure can be thought of as the frequency or the amount of time that we're exposed to something or the hazard. Okay, so think frequency as well. So like how many times a day do you use that utensil? How long is that smoothie stored in the container? So these are the different things of exposure. And it's important because we can't get around this in the kitchen, right? We need to eat. We need to eat a lot. And so the frequency is a lot. So that's why this formula is so important. So if you go away with anything today, keep this in mind. That sometimes we can't do a lot about how hazardous something is, but we can make a difference with our exposure and the frequency of the toxins that and the chemicals of concern. So this is the heart of what we're suggesting for the actions of change and the lifestyle changes that we'll be talking about today. So where do I begin? Well, a lot of the solutions actually are similar to what was done 70 and 80 years ago. So yeah, what would grandma do? So when I was in business and customers would come in and they'd tell us their certain circumstances and they want to know, what do I do and all that. Well, we would stop and think, my little partner and we'd say, well, what did they do back 70, 80 years? And actually, we solved a lot of problems that way. So even though this kind of sounds silly, it actually works. So remember, humans have been cooking and baking for thousands of years. So we actually have been doing a lot of things pre-plastic. So just keep that in mind and you can come up with a lot of solutions. So let's take a deep breath. That was a lot of science. And we're going to get down to business here. So let's start with appliances. So gas and electric stoves and ovens, countertop convection ovens, griddles, grills, all of those things, they might have PFAS chemicals associated with them, flame retardants, and the concern there are the VOCs, volatile organic compounds, particulate matter, fumes, PTFE, flame retardants, PAHs, okay, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. That's a big family of chemicals, and there are a lot of carcinogens under that family. So what's the tip? Vent, vent, vent. When you cook, do not overheat. Avoid charred foods. Maybe you've read that grilled foods are, like barbecuing, is associated with colon cancer. You can also use the back burners and not be susceptible to the fumes as well. Microwaves, we're concerned about EMFs, electromagnetic fields, and plastics. So simple, stand back 6 to 10 feet. Do not use any plastics in the microwave. They do leach. I don't care what the manufacturer says. It is not safe, and they have been shown to migrate. So electric kettles, maybe you've seen clear plastic electric kettles. Those are usually BPA. They might say BPA-free. It was just substituted usually with another bisphenol, a regrettable substitute, unfortunately. But some of them are plastic number 5 and number 4 as well. So, and the concern is that they create microplastics. So please use glass or stainless steel to be safe. So just to sort of drive home the point, a study was done in Germany back in 2019, and they tested 4 plastic kettles and 1 glass one. So as you can see in the graph, the glass is down at the bottom because very few microplastics were counted. But in the other four containers, and a kettle is about a liter or something, they actually counted the microplastics that were in there. If you look over at the left, some of these had between 5,000 and almost 30,000 microplastics, little bits of plastic floating in the kettle. So that's just kind of a big ick factor. I'm just pointing this out. I guess one of the questions, remember we talked about particle size. So the scientists did say that about 90% of the particles were actually too big to be absorbed. However, that left 10% of the plastics could go right into our bloodstream. And if you're talking 30,000 plastics and 10% of that, that's a lot of plastic actually going into our blood. So continuing the appliances, the concern with coffee makers, internal plastic components, tubing, they actually will put antibacterials sometimes in there. So if you can use glass or stainless steel French press or pour over, that's a better idea. Water filters, I'm thinking countertop. They are often a polybicarbonate, that's the hard plastic. BPA, I know it might say BPA-free, it might be BPS, still not great. Remember, most plastics leach. So you can use it. The deal is, again, think frequency or contact time, just pour it out right away. That's what I do. So that gets back into our little formula that we talked about. So utensils, okay, lots of gadgets in the kitchen. So cutting boards, you have options, right? Plastic, they create microplastics. Sometimes they're coated with antibacterials. Please use wood and bamboo. I rather eat wood, which is kind of like celery or cellulose, right, than plastic. Utensils, plastic, again, microplastics, we got a theme going on here, and they're the silicones, not horrible. You can use metal, wood, or bamboo. Wax paper, cups, I'm thinking the paraffin kind. Paraffin, if it were pure, isn't so bad. It's a large molecule. The problem is a lot of contaminants come along with it. And a lot of them, papers and cups are also coated with the PFAS. So my tip is saying silicone parchment paper. Well, I prefer that over the wax paper. And if you think about silicone parchment paper, it's just a plain coating on it. It's not all the additives and all the other stuff that usually come with the other kinds of utensils. As far as coffee filters, they can be bleached, and so you have contaminants associated with that. So try and use the browner paper, the unbleached, or you can use the metal screens. Straws, they can be paper or plastic. Again, you're concerned about microplastics, contaminants, and also PFAS. So a study just came out where they analyzed paper straws, and they found 34 out of 36 companies actually coated their straws with PFAS. Go figure. So yeah, that's a problem. So, but there's a lot of stainless steel and cool glass straws that are out in the market. Continuing with the utensils, you have ice cube trays. Yeah, grandma used the stainless steel, so you can reduce the plastic and silicone use because there's a lot of contact time, right? Sometimes the water stays in there for a long time. Juicers typically are plastic. Again, just pour out immediately into glass for storage. Mixing bowls, plastic, again, worried about microplastics. And also the old glass ones or ceramic. Sometimes there's been some lead contamination. So you can always check that. They have these lead testers like at Home Depot for $5, and you can do a little swab if you have any concern. So use glass and ceramic, lead-free, of course. Plastic wrap, lots of issues with phthalates leaching from them, and PVC plastic wraps sometimes, lots of contaminants. So if you have to use them, use the least clingy type. I know not as much fun, but it has less chemicals that will leach. Or you can wrap it with cloth. You can use a plate for a cover over a bowl, just like grandma, and you can use reusable containers. So food contact materials. So this is a big category. You remember canned food controversy, over the BPA. That was in the headlines 5-10 years ago, and also in beverage can containers. They used to be lined with BPA. A lot of them have switched to these other kind of resins that you can see there, including PVC, gross. A lot of them they started to say BPA-free, but they just substituted it for a regrettable BPS or something. And it's a moving target. The industry changes these all the time. It's hard to pin down a company. So I prefer just not to use them. All the beverage canned materials still use BPA. They haven't really switched the other ones. So even that nice little seltzer water that's in a can has BPA, and it's leaching into your seltzer water, just saying. The tip, buy glass and use fresh, dried, or frozen foods. Processed foods are cartons, boxes, bags, okay? They can be contaminated. Believe it or not, the recycled paper, the fumes can go into the food, so can the inks, the plastics, and they use anti-static chemicals on the inner bag sometimes, so the static doesn't get created. And of course, there's PFAS contamination. So buying in bulk helps. Again, you can buy things in glass or fresh. Pop your corn in metal, cook from scratch. And basically, you saw the study I pointed out before. Try and reduce your processed food consumption. Food service packaging, takeout and wrapped trays. A lot of them are plastic, aluminum, see all the plastic. Microplastics are the concern, PFAS, phthalates, styrene comes from your styrofoam, right? And that does leach into your coffee. And antimicrobials, they'll put those on those food trays, that your meat comes in and stuff. So again, try and reduce your pre-packaged foods or remove the food immediately, store in glass or stainless steel. Tabletop plates, drinks, cutlery, yeah, plastic, microplastics, concerned about lead sometimes, other contaminants. Just don't use plastic or melamine. Melamine also does leach. So food storage and bottles, right? Again, plastics, BPA, aluminum, silicone, antimicrobials, use glass, stainless steel, cloth bags, bees wrap, very cool product. A plate, again, cover over a bowl. And glass containers are really easy to find. You can go into Target and get a nice stacked set. Yes, they have the plastic lids. That's not a problem if it's not actually touching the food. So those are really common now. It's a great product. So really you can easily now store in glass. So just a little graphic, because I have been talking about a few family of chemicals, and it just seems that I've just mentioned a few, but this graph actually adds to the list. So you can see just the metal and the plastic and the paper, that there's actually a lot of potential for different chemicals to leach into our food. So I kind of like this graphic. I just wanted to share it real quickly. So now the cleaning category. So for general cleaning in the kitchen, we have chemicals of concerns. They can create the VOCs, the gases that are released. Maybe sometimes they're the smells. Lots of endocrine disrupting chemicals in these cleaning products. Some are carcinogens, allergens. Some are undisclosed chemicals because cleaning companies don't have to put all the ingredients on the package, except in California and New York. Thank you, California and New York. So the tip is to use fully disclosed, simple ingredients from reputable companies, or you can just use a spray container with vinegar and baking soda for most of your needs. Wet mop the floor instead of brushing and bringing up the dust. Always rinse, please. You wouldn't just soap your face and leave it there, right? You would rinse it so that it's the same for your countertop. And you can use a website called EWG, the Environmental Working Group Organization. They have 3 excellent, wonderful databases, and one is on cleaning products, and you can look up cleaners and they rate them and they tell you, you know, what's in them and their safety and all that. So I strongly advise you to check out the Environmental Working Group, a great organization there. So disinfecting countertops, touch points is kind of hot topic right now. And the big concern is bleach and ammonia and mixtures that happen. So really hot soap and water, good ingredients, are going to get the bulk of your cleaning. You can also use alcohol, 70%. That's much safer than bleach. Follow the suggestion for contact or dwell time. It needs to sit there for, you know, a certain number of seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. If you really want to kill the germs, always, always rinse, please. So oven cleaning, okay? A lot of our ovens are self-cleaning, and the concern is that they are coated with PFASs, the Teflon, and that is going to set off those fumes. Maybe some of you have done that, and it's a really specific smell, and you can get away with not using that mode of cleaning. So the aerosols, lots of chemicals of concern. You really can use baking soda and make a paste out of it and smear it on. Let it sit overnight. It wipes off the next day. I promise it works. Might need to repeat it for really heavy duty, but really that will work. Some ovens come with a steam cleaning mode. You can use that. Avoid the aerosol cleaners. You can, again, check out EWG to see if there's anything safe cleaning that you could use. I just put in this stainless steel burnt pan because I get a lot of questions because people want to use stainless steel, and if you're not familiar with how to use it, it is typical that people overheat and burn their items and, oh, it's burning, it's no good anymore. Well, the real trick is soaking it in a little soap and baking soda, boiling water overnight, and you're going to be able to scrub that off, no problem, I promise. So easy to do. Pests, ants, fruit flies, etc. Of course, we don't want to go spraying pesticides all over our kitchen and then eat it or smell it. So chemicals of concern. As far as ants and things like roaches or the little sugar ants, I hate to say it, but you need to do a deep clean. They are coming into your kitchen because there is something to eat, whether it's a little food that got spilled on the counter, maybe something got knocked over in your cupboards. You really need to do a deep clean, and that's the start of getting rid of these little critters. As far as fruit flies, you can always do a little plate of vinegar. They love apple cider vinegar. Just a drop of soap, and they get stuck in it, so that can help with those pests. Get a lot of questions about sponges, dishcloths, rags, towels, and they go smelly and yucky bacteria, concerned about chemicals on them. And the key to that is they need to dry out so the molds and stuff can't grow. Wash them frequently, okay? That's so easy to do. Just throw them in the wash. Use a rag once a day and you're never going to have a problem. You can also soak them in vinegar. That's going to kill a lot of these smelly bacteria items. Everybody's favorite category, cookware, bakeware, pots, and pans. We are going to start with Teflon. The PFAS is the concern. Remember, it is technically PTFE on top. Concerned about microparticles, if it's all scratched, yuck. If you have to use these items, remember I said have to, please don't ever buy again. Don't overheat and try not to scratch them. Try to avoid high heat oils because the temperature then gets up into that dangerous range where the Teflon fumes then come out, okay? Please switch to stainless steel, cast iron, or enamel. Enamel can come on cast iron, like the Le Creuset. Enamel can also be on stainless steel, sort of like your camping kits. And please never buy this non-stick category again. Promise, please, never again. Needs to come out of our system. So the ceramic coated non-stick silicone category, okay? The biggest concern there is that apparently the surface breakdown is really quick. A lot of people say, oh, my pan wore out in less than 2 years. And as an environmentalist, I have a problem with things wearing out so quickly. So I'm not wild about this category. There have been a few research items showing leaching. Again, you have concerns about D4 and D5. Try not to overheat or scratch it. That seems to be the problem with the breakdown of the surface area. But again, this is sort of the category, but I am covering that. So aluminum, we have some maybe old aluminum pots and boiling things in our kitchen. Of course, there's aluminum foil. Aluminum does migrate into your food. The question is it harmful? So if you remember way back when we were talking about the routes of exposure into our body, aluminum is one of the metals or compounds where it's actually a particle size that is pretty big. And so very little of it actually can get into our body. And I know it's controversial that they've associated with Alzheimer's and breast cancer, but the science really is not definitive on that. But when they've done the migration studies and they've seen, okay, here's your exposure to aluminum, how much actually goes into our body, the science is saying that less than 1% of the consumed aluminum actually gets into our bloodstream. So they say 0.1 to 0.03% of the aluminum is actually absorbed. So that's not a huge amount. The good news is aluminum is excreted, not as fast as BPA, but it can be. So if you're not exposed to it frequently, that's good news. So using it once in a while, I don't see a problem. Using it for things like boiling water for pasta is no big deal. However, acids will have the aluminum leach into like a tomato sauce. So don't use it for that. Don't cover your lasagna, your nice tomatoey lasagna with aluminum foil. You'll see that it actually disintegrates it. So just know when to use it, and once in a while, really, it's not a big deal. So ceramic coated I already did that. That's the ceramic one I wanted. So ceramic, real ceramic, porcelain and enamel is kind of like glass, right? But there has been some concerns about lead contamination. So again, if you're worried, just do a lead swab, make sure it's lead free. Same with glass, Pyrex and Corningware. Only consideration there is, again, maybe some of the old stuff, or if it's natural stuff that's come from another country, that's usually the ceramic. A concern is lead contamination. Again, use lead free. Cast iron, carbon steel, one of my favorite kinds of pans. Does it leach? Yeah, it's pure iron, right? So yes, there is iron leaching. This is not a problem unless you have the inherited condition called hemochromatosis. That is the only concern here. In fact, the iron that's leached from there, even if it rusts, it's just pure iron. So that's like a cheap iron pill, right? It's the same thing in your vitamins. Well, not quite. But it does get transferred into iron consumption. So don't be afraid of this leaching from the cast iron. Stainless steel, my other favorite pan. Does it leach? A little bit. Nickel and chromium are used to make stainless steel. Both of these are essential micronutrients. You must have these as a human in order to live, okay? Very small. In fact, I have nickel on my vitamin pill. So your body, it's one of those, the dose makes the poison. The nickel and chromium, no problem, leaching at low levels, but leaching, like everything we've talked about, will increase with time contact and with acids. It's not a problem. There's nickel and chromium in all sorts of foods. There's nickel in walnuts and all kinds of things that we eat. So do not let this be an issue. And it doesn't matter if your stainless steel scratches, it does not promote more leaching. The only issue is if you are extremely highly allergic to nickel or chromium, and that is not very many people. So really, it's not a big deal. So I'm just putting this little graphic up because it kind of reinforces everything we just talked about. So you can see the Ecology Center also kind of is repeating the same thing. So over on the left, we have the preferred stainless steel and cast iron and glass. And over on the right, we have please avoid PTFE, Teflon, PFASs. And in the middle, you have the orange category, the silicone, and then, the meh category. So just to sort of reinforce what I've been saying. Oh my goodness. So takeaways here. I'm just going to leave you with some tips here. So always vent, 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 vent whenever you can. And even if it's just the oven, please vent. And if you have gas appliances, check that they're regulated, because sometimes they can go off over the years and actually leak a little bit of gas. Minimize or eliminate the use of plastics and PFAS-coated nonstick materials. Use safe cleaning practices that we talked about. Stand back when you're microwaving. A lot of people use the nonstick because they're worried about their fat consumption. And I challenge you to use the stainless steel and cast iron with just a half a teaspoon of olive oil. That's only 20 calories, and a lot of that calories is staying in the pan. And you won't believe that it works, and really this is not a big deal. So really try that for the non-stick capabilities of these pans. Remember exposure time and frequency when making food contact decisions, and eat more fresh and organic foods. And above all, be like grandma or great grandma, depending on how old you are. So that's kind of the tips in a nutshell. So if you need to get in touch with me, I love answering questions. You can find me at cancerfreehome@gmail.com. I also have a Facebook page, Cancer Free Home, so you can find me there. And you can also ask me questions on Facebook. That way everybody can see the questions and the answers that I give. So thank you for having me. Thank you for coming on today. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, Seema and Erica. And a big thank you shout out to Meg Hirschberg, who made the Anticancer Lifestyle Program possible. So back to you, Erica.
All right, I'm actually going to jump in here. Erica's helping us on
Oh,
the
sorry,
back end today.
Seema.
Thank you so much, Deb. That was really informative, and I loved all the specific tips that you had for each category. So we all kind of know what to do moving forward. I just want to remind everyone today's webinar is 75 minutes. So we're going to go into the Q&A now, but if you do have to drop off, we are going to be sending a recording with today's presentation. So I'm going to go ahead. We did get a lot of questions while you were talking, Deb. So I tried to kind of segment them by topic. So I'm going to start with cookware. So
Okay.
The first question we have, how safe is hard nitrating cast iron cookware?
Hard nitrating?
Nitrating, N-I-T-R-I-D-I-N-G.
Cast iron?
Yeah, cast iron cookware.
Actually, I will say I have never heard of that.
Okay, gotcha. So we
but I will say, I know there's anodized aluminum, which would be a great product just by itself. And then they put nonstick PFAS on top of it. But I guess I don't see a need for doing anything to cast iron. So I'm curious about that, and I will look into that. Thank you for the question.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll do some research and we can get back to everyone. We have another question. Are silicone or nylon spatulas safe for cooking? If not, what's the best option?
So the nylon is basically plastic, and we talked about the different silicone. So basically, the nylon or the plastic ones, you, the, what you're ingesting are microplastics. So because if you scrape and you stir and everything, those little bits do fall into your food, and then you're going to consume them. So again, depending on the size of the microplastic, you might absorb that, and we don't know the health risks associated with that. So I did talk about the silicone cookware in the webinar earlier. So again, that's kind of the meh category, not as bad as PFAS chemicals, but still not as good as traditional cookware. Oh,
Gotcha.
sorry,
Okay.
use wood and metal as utensils instead.
Perfect. Okay. We have another question here. We're getting a lot of questions about stainless steel, and I know you kind of touched upon this. What about stainless steel bowls and mixing bowls?
Yeah, they're great. Yeah, go for it. No problem there. Absolutely. I have a set. They're super.
Awesome. Okay. And then we have another question here. Let's see. What nonstick pans are safe?
So I'm not wild about the traditional Teflon coated or Teflon like. A lot of cheap companies use the same process. They can't call it Teflon because that's a trade name. So if they're using the PFAS and the PTFE chemical, I don't really consider them great safety. So please stay away from those. Then you have the other nonstick category, which is the silicone base. Sometimes they call it ceramic coating, and it really is the silicone base. So that's in the meh category.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. Where can I buy a good cast iron cookware? Like a
Okay, good question. So the new companies like, or I shouldn't say new, because Lodge has been around a while. So Lodge, has had this new revival because of people going back to cast iron. But they're doing cast iron, and if you've seen a Lodge pan, they're actually pretty bumpy on the inside where the cooking surface area. I prefer old ones because what they did was after they did the cast of the iron, they actually took a machine polisher and made the inside really smooth. And you only get that with the antique model ones or the vintage ones. So I actually prefer those over the new Lodge ones. There are a couple of cast iron companies that are very, very high end. And I mean, they cost $200 a pan. Go to a vintage one. All it is cast iron. It is the same thing. So there's nothing magical about it. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I walked into Goodwill and I found a number 10 cast iron, $15. Okay. And there was a few rust on it. I scrubbed it up. It was a problem, gave it to one of my daughters. And so they're out there. You can go on eBay, walk into a thrift store, antique shop, very easy to find. But I prefer the old ones because they have that nice smooth surface, and then you can almost make it non-stick yourself by keeping the oil on it.
Awesome. Good to know. Yeah. I'll have to check out my local Goodwill for some cookware. Let's see. There's another question that we actually just got in the chat. Do you have a recommendation? Let's see. What is this? What is the safe product for cooking soup? So I guess because it's kind of a longer process.
Yeah, soups and they're larger containers. Yeah, so I'd go with the stainless steel. Yeah, or again, you can go with the enamel coated. So the Le Creuset. Make sure it's a good reputable company, because again, there were some knockoffs, might be concerned about lead, but really your stainless steel is going to do it. Nice big pot.
Excellent. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to move into our next category, which is water. So we did a webinar with Deb
Yeah.
a few months back on water, and Erica can put the link to that webinar in the chat. But let's see, I'm going to go ahead and ask these couple questions here. So I filter my drinking water with Brita filters. Of course, everything is made of plastic. So am I doing myself more harm than good by filtering my water?
The answer is no. However, letting it sit in that Brita, yes, because it will be leaching. So I use a Brita filter, okay? So if I'm going to be doing my coffee or making soups, I use a Brita filter, but I pour it out right away. Interestingly enough, in Canada, you can buy Brita filters with a glass container, but we can't buy that in the US. So just pour it out right away. Again, think about exposure time, contact time. If you pour it out right away, it doesn't have time to leach. So no, go ahead and filter it and just pour it out right away.
Perfect. Okay. And then we have another question here. I know we posted a PFAS free list of consumer products on our website, and Erica I posted it a couple times in the chat, so I'll post it again just so everybody has it. But there is another question here. What countertop water pitcher filter system do you recommend? Since I'm undergoing chemotherapy, I am drinking double to triple the amount of water every day. If there are none that are toxic free, should I pay more for the under the sink filtration system?
Well, like in our tap water webinar, you kind of need to know what's in your water in order to find out the appropriate filter. So if you're on city water, you can actually look that up. I think EWG has a tap water database. If you're on well water, you need to have it tested because there might be some contaminants in there that a Brita filter can't get rid of. Okay, but if you're generally speaking, usually municipality, a Brita filter or the 01 is very good. It seems to get out a few more contaminants. But if you go to the EWG website, again, they can get you started in that, or watch our tap water webinar, and I go through it from beginning to end, and that will help.
Excellent. Yeah, I just put the link in the chat for
Okay, great.
the
Thank you.
Yeah, I put in my zip code, and I was very alarmed to see what was in my drinking water.
Yeah, it's
It was a
crazy.
really useful resource. Okay, so our next question, what about ice that comes from an ice maker in the freezer?
Yeah, that's interesting because there's a lot of plastic tubing that brings the water into the ice cubes, and then they sit in a plastic container and then they get dumped out. Do I use the ice in my um, ice maker out of my refrigerator? Yeah. Um, but I don't use a lot of ice. So again, getting back to frequency, if you're a big user of ice, you might want to think about that. If you only use it once in a while, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we want to reiterate that we're educating everyone. We don't want to cause people to feel paranoid all the time. And,
Right.
there's a fine balance
Woo.
of, trying to do the right thing, but then, understanding that not everything is going to be.
Yeah, we could go crazy on this subject, and the bottom line is our environment is never going to be pure in our lifetime. So there's so much just in the air that we breathe that is no longer pure. So we have to kind of step back and not go crazy about this subject. And again, really thinking about frequency of exposure is really going to help calm things down and go, okay, that's not so bad.
Exactly. Yep. All right. So I think that covers our water section. And again, we have a webinar that Erica is posting in the chat if you want a full hour of information from Deb on water. So we're going to move into food, and there's a lot of questions here. So I'm going to kind of rapid fire ask some of these questions just so we can get through a good portion of them. So what type of food cans are safe to use?
So there are a couple of companies that have been really dedicated to this. I want to say Eden, Field Day, those are two. They even have a little trouble with the acid products like tomatoes. Those are really hard to store in cans. So I would urge you to buy your tomato products in glass. The other companies are a moving target. They have changed what they use inside their cans over the years. And the last study that sort of looked at many companies was, I think the study's 5 years old. So it's almost irrelevant today. Of course, you could contact the company. That's if they'll tell you what they're using. But again, I'd stick to really good companies that are dedicated to this, and they'll be open. They'll tell you on their website what they're using.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. When we purchase meats and they are in plastic containers, what do you recommend storing the meat in before going into the freezer?
Yeah, so you could take it out of that little plastic wrap, that little food tray with that little foamy thing on it. And that's where you could use parchment paper. So go ahead and use the silicone parchment paper for that to touch the meat. And then you can put that in plastic to really give it a good seal so that you don't get freezer burn or something. So that's one way to deal with that.
Okay. And then we have another question here. It seems microwaves are not good, but when you recook, you lose nutrition. What's the best way to heat up food then?
Actually, microwaves can sometimes get a bad rap in terms of heating up foods. So reheating something that's already been cooked, it doesn't matter if it's in the oven or in the microwave, you still might lose some nutrients. But actually, there are a lot of foods that actually gain nutrition and nutrients during microwaving. So I wouldn't go by that. It's just avoid plastic because of the leaching capabilities. So put it on a porcelain plate and put a cover over it that doesn't touch it, and you're fine. But don't be afraid of the microwave in terms of what it's doing to the food. There's really no science to that, but the science is there in terms of the EMFs that are used while you're doing it. So just stand back from it. Don't put your nose up against the glass to see if it's boiling yet.
Gotcha. Is there like a safe distance?
Yeah, 6 to 10 feet.
6 to 10 feet. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. All right. Let's see. What's your general sentiment on Ziploc bags?
Yeah, the Ziploc bags are plastic. So, and that's a great question, actually. So they're not the super clingy, so they typically don't have the phthalate leaching issue. Are they going to leach other endocrine disrupting chemicals? Maybe. So what are you putting in the plastic? If you're putting something dry in there, like a sandwich, it's not going to leach because it's not a wet material where it's pulling the leachates out of the plastic. Now, if you're pouring, hot soup in there because you want to freeze it and then transport it somewhere, that's a different story. So again, look at what you're actually putting into the plastic and its contact surface area. And again, I don't see a problem with dried things, crackers, sandwiches, not an issue.
All right. So, and I know you touched upon this already, but if you don't mind going over it one more time, can you talk about parchment paper? Is it the same as silicone parchment? Is it harmful to use parchment paper with oil? And then they said, I roast veggies on parchment paper.
So usually parchment paper is silicone. So that's why they separate that from wax paper. Okay, so wax paper usually can't take a high heat. In fact, you risk starting a fire if your oven is too hot. So that's wax paper is going to be coated with your paraffin. So parchment typically is silicone. So just look at the box and make sure it says silicone. So because it's just a paper and a layer of silicone over, it doesn't have the additives and the sealants and the adhesives and everything that the silicone products or pans have. So it's a little bit safer with regard to that. Are you maybe getting some leaching? Maybe a little bit, but again, not so much. There's not so much surface contact area when you're doing things like roasting vegetables. I don't see that the oil is an issue on there. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Would it be better to use a stainless steel pan in terms of if yes, you can get them. In terms of true safety, yes, but I don't see a problem with silicone parchment paper, and I've been known to use it myself, so don't worry about it.
Awesome. All right. And just a general question about straws. We got a couple of questions. I know you mentioned bamboo straws. So somebody was asking how safe are bamboo straws? And then how do you feel about compostable made from corn straws?
Oh, okay. So bamboo straws, if they are real bamboo and they haven't coated the inside with an antibacterial, which I suspect they could, but you could just get pure bamboo. Uh, my only concern with that is because the inside of the bamboo is not going to be a smooth surface. You're going to catch particles of whatever you're drinking, and also it can stay moist. So I would be concerned about mold. If it's a one-time use, I don't see a problem. In terms of what was the corn? I haven't seen corn ones. I would be very suspicious of what they're lining the inside with. Again, you want to make sure that there's no PFAS. A lot of the compostable corn plates and bowls, for instance, actually have been lined with PFAS, and it's just kind of being disclosed now. So you kind of have to be careful in those categories as well. They're trying to change it up, but that is also a moving target. So really, stainless steel, you can at least scrub it with a little, straw brush. Is really best, and they make really nice glass ones too.
Gotcha. Okay. So basically read your labels very carefully.
Yeah, and those are reusable too. You're not throwing stuff out.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right, we have just a few more minutes, so I'm going to go quickly into our cleaning questions. What brand of cleaning products do you recommend, like for countertops, cleaning bathrooms, showers, etc.?
Yeah, I guess seventh generation is going to be my go-to. They've been dedicated from day one in this category in terms of chemicals of concern. Do they rate A on everything they make with the environmental group database? No, but you can start there. So that would be my favorite company. There are other smaller companies, but again, I would this area can be a moving target. So I would use the EWG database. Mrs. Myers is a very middle of the road category. They have not been dedicated to this subject matter from day one. They do use synthetic oils. So for instance, their lilac smell has to be synthetic. So in my mind, they are not a true blue company. So you do have to be a little careful, but remember, really simple, baking soda and vinegar you don't need a magic company. Or you just use your hot soap and water.
Perfect. All right. So I'm actually going to hop back because I know this is everyone's probably most popular question. And I know you already talked about it a little bit, but just going back to the canned foods and BPA. So if a canned, if it says non-BPA, is that still safe? And maybe you could just talk about it one more time because I know a lot of people
Yeah.
are always,
Yeah, when the whole BPA in the canned foods came out several years ago, some companies were switching. And what they did was they put BPA-free on it, okay? And what they did was they just changed it to the kissing cousin BPS, and which is just as bad, but they were able to label it BPA-free. Actually, most companies are not saying anything free now because they want to be able to use different resins at will and not have to change their outside packaging because that's expensive to do. So they've backed off from saying BPA free. Even Eden, I think Eden was one of the first ones that actually labeled it, and then they stopped labeling. So it is really hard to find that. But don't just assume because something says BPA free, whether it's canned foods or anything else, that it is free from all bisphenols. Okay, they've probably just substituted it to one of the kissing cousins, and it's a family. They're all related, and so we call those regrettable substitutions. So unfortunately, you have to do your homework sometimes.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you so much, Deb. That was so informative.